Hello and welcome to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Superman Unlimited Issue 2 by Dan Slott, Raphael Albuquerque, and Marcelo Maiolo. The world is covered in kryptonite thanks to a large asteroid raining pieces of the precious and dangerous mineral down on its surface, and it's left Superman and his family vulnerable to all sorts of attack. Before we get into how Superman deals with the kryptonite, we find out more about the Daily Planet's expansion into other cities around the world, with replicas of the Metropolis Daily Planet, complete with iconic rooftop globe, have been opened in Gotham, Markovia, and even Simeon Island, among other places. As I said in my review of the first issue, I love how this opens the door to so many cool stories, since now we can have and see these characters in the Daily Planet that usually, just stick in Metropolis, in and around Metropolis and the Daily Planet, can now branch out into other cities. Like we could have stories of Jimmy going to Gotham and covering stories, or Lois is out in Markovia or something like that. It just gets them a bit more involved in the story, and I'm all for that. Lois meanwhile is in El Caldero with Ron Troop, visiting the new nation that has a monopoly on all of the kryptonite that has rained down on Earth as it hit in their backyard. She's there to oversee the new Daily Planet office opening, asking if the president needs one of the holographic globes the other officers have been getting, but President Castillo isn't interested, instead revealing to them a solid kryptonite sculpture of the Daily Planet globe he's going to erect on top of the building, telling Lois and Ron that they plan to raise the planet to the heavens. Interestingly, the president doesn't seem antagonistic to Superman. Yeah, they have all of this kryptonite and they're using it to make currency, weapons, technology, all that sort of stuff. But they see Superman as much a hero as everyone else, as thanks to him saving them from the asteroid, that's what caused the big piece of it to land literally in their backyard, which then gave them a way to make their country now powerful and rich. The president shows Lois some of their new kryptonite currency, which actually honors Superman, whose visage is embossed in all of the notes, and the coins have Krypto's face on them, which means they have been dubbed by the president as Kryptos. Now this is really fucking cool, and also a little fucked up. Like, these people are using radioactive pieces of Superman's homeworld as their currency, and then they're also quote-unquote honoring him by putting his face on them. Like, that's a little fucked up, and I kind of like that we get to explore that here, and I like what Slott is doing here, where we actually are exploring how kryptonite is being used outside of just making, guns and bullets and missiles and all that sort of stuff. It's showing us it's got so many more uses than just as a weapon. And I'm hoping we actually dive a little bit more into it, because I'd love to learn how they able to make stuff be powered by it. They're making buildings out of it and all this sort of stuff. So hopefully we get to see a bit more of that in the coming issues as we explore more of the cauldron. The giant kryptonite globe soon begins to be installed in the building, but the area is attacked by a group of terrorists who have come to claim the kryptonite globe for themselves. The president isn't too concerned with these simple thugs, as his Krypto Knights, a group of warriors wearing kryptonite armor, arrive, defeating the terrorists with little trouble. The Knights here are quite an interesting group of characters, since they seem to be quite excited to be able to defend the city and the planet in general, and even the president is happy for them to save the day, but he doesn't want Lois to sort of report on it as big news or anything, since he knows everyone in the city is equal thanks to the kryptonite has made them equal, since it's given them all equal power, and he doesn't want to claim power over anyone else. So he's definitely showing this sort of air of a guy who is a good guy, like this is all stuff you would see a good guy do, but then also that's also something a bad guy would do to kind of mask what he's really doing behind the scenes. And I'm sure this guy's probably going to turn out to be a villain, but I kind of hope that there's a bit more to it than, he just is. I kind of hope there's maybe a story there of maybe the kryptonite, the greed of the kryptonite is what makes him weak and turns him into a villain. I think that would be a nice through line through the story as well, of the kryptonite affects Superman, but it also affects other people in different ways too. Back in Metropolis, Jack Ryder wakes the city up with his talk show, talking about the kryptonite like everyone else. But he talks about an interesting thing with that he claims that the radiation will not only affect Kryptonians, but humans, livestock, the water, and everything else on the world as well. He begins interviewing a farmer who claims her two-headed goat is a byproduct of the kryptonite radiation. The show was soon interrupted by Clark Kent, who is there to fact-check Jack and his claims, as per their Galaxy broadcast agreement. Clark can clearly see that the goat is around 2 years old, whereas the kryptonite hit Earth only 3 months ago, so the goat can't possibly be a product of the kryptonite poisoning their world now. Now this is a very fun thing to include in the book. Now Jack Ryder is a character who has existed as like a radio talk show host, a news anchor, or just like a personality on talk shows and stuff. He's existed like that for years, and I like how here they're kind of billing him as kind of like a Joe Rogan sort of Alex Jones type podcaster guy. You know, he's talking about conspiracies and stuff like that, but it's also conspiracies that are like he's completely right about this. Like the kryptonite will no doubtly be affecting people. We've seen that happen in the past, like Lex Luthor got cancer from his use of kryptonite. So I imagine that he is indeed right. He's just going about it in the wrong way. He's kind of like stoking like people's fears and everything that you would see people like Rogan and Jones do often. Also, for people who don't know, Jack is also the hero known as the Creeper, whom we actually saw recently in the new Superman ongoing when he teamed with Superwoman to fight some Kun. Pitting Jack here as Clark's rival is quite cool too, as he really hates Clark doing this fact-checking stuff and it's kind of ruining his rating. So I imagine there's going to be some sort of story between him and Clark, not Creeper and Superman, which is quite interesting. Creeper uses this opportunity to gloat over Jack, causing the being to start to come out a little bit more in Jack's persona, as downtown, the villain Knockout leads a group of bank robbers to rob an armored truck of its gold bullion. Superman arrives and demands that they surrender, easily dealing with Knockout before confronting the gun-toting thugs. The thugs, however, aren't scared since they have kryptonite bullets, shooting Superman in the shoulder with them. Slot's little narration here for Superman is great because it gives you an idea on how Superman deals with these situations where it's kind of muscle memory for him. He sees a guy with a gun, he stands in front of the gun, they shoot at him, the bullets bounce off of him and not someone else. And it's, as he says, it's all muscle memory, so he just kind of does this and he realizes too late that there's kryptonite, which has dulled his powers and his senses, so he wasn't able to sense it in time, and that's what allowed him to get shot. It also shows a little bit of interesting thing we never really get with Superman, is that it shows a little bit of arrogance and a little bit of complacency, something we never really see with Superman. So that's quite interesting, and I imagine this is going to have some sort of effect on him where he realizes he can't really do that anymore, and he has to kind of change up the game a little bit so he can't have that arrogance anymore. Not wanting to waste expensive bullets on Superman, the thugs turn to their kryptonite knives and knuckle dusters, wailing on the Man of Steel in the middle of the street. Creeper, meanwhile, has been let out by Jack, having tricked him into letting him go out for some big belly burger, but instead he's going to the armored car heist he heard about on the news. Creeper sees Superman getting beaten up, and instead of helping, he decides to eat his burger and watch, figuring that it's just dinner and a show for him. As Superman is beaten up, his body suddenly turns gold, which causes the kryptonite knife the thug is about to stab him with to shatter on impact. I didn't think we'd actually be touching this whole gold aura Superman thing we saw at the end of the last issue so soon. I figured that would be kind of like a long-running mystery where little bits get revealed here and there, but Slot gets right into it in a flashback as Batman reveals that Superman, whenever he now comes in contact with large quantities of this new green kryptonite, his body will release all the yellow sun energy stored in its cells, healing him instantly and forming a protective, albeit temporary, shield around him from the kryptonite radiation, finding that it lasts about 3 minutes. There is a downside though, since it does have that ticking clock element, but much like his solar flare ability, after the shield activates, he needs to recharge with sunlight again, so he'll be left without his powers for a time. And not only that, he'll also still be vulnerable to kryptonite more so than anyone else. I do like the work that's being put into this new power, and it's not just going to be some OP Deus Ex Machina power that can save Superman every time he's in trouble. He's going to have to be very careful about how he uses it, since while it's not outrightly said, I don't know whether he has full control over the power or whether it just activates when there's like a certain number of radiation particles in the air or something. It's not really outrightly explained. They're probably going to explain it a little bit later in detail in the coming issues. But I like that there is that sort of handicap there where it's not just something that he can just turn on and off at will. There is also enough of the mystery left in the dark, as Batman is unsure why Superman is the only one of the Kryptonians who is able to do this and the others can't. I do have to imagine it's tied to the kryptonite seemingly coming from the future, maybe? Like this is some sort of test or something to get Superman ready for a coming threat. If I was a betting man, I'd say maybe it was tied to, you know, the big absolute storyline that all these comics are seemingly building towards. Maybe this is Slot setting up like his little part in this and giving Superman sort of a power that could help him in some way. I'm very intrigued to see what it is, because when he set up that first issue that this kryptonite came from the future and it's a new type of kryptonite that has different radiation and like it affects humans now more than it usually does, It's all very interesting stuff, and I can't wait for him to explore more of it. Back in the present, the Golden Superman takes down the thugs with no trouble, crushing all of their guns into a ball and tossing it so far into space it begins orbiting Jupiter. He finishes off the thugs as the power fades, but Knockout recovers from the beating she took, deciding it's time for round 2 with the Man of Steel. Superman, now without his powers, doesn't want to fight since obviously he really can't. Instead, he talks Knockout down, telling her this will end with her being thrown against another wall, and he doesn't want to do that. This is a neat bit of story here since Superman is having to kind of adapt what he would do with the Clark persona and kind of mask and bluff his way out of situations. You know, he doesn't have his powers, so he can't really fight this person, so he's kind of got to talk them down, which is something Superman has done in the past, which I think is really quite cool that they're putting themselves into a corner where they have to do that. They can't just say like, oh, and then he like flies away and beats out the villain. Like, the end. Like, they have to write their way out of this situation they've gotten themselves into. The cops come and arrest Knockout and the thugs, but find one has gone astray. Thug meanwhile hides in an alleyway, pulling a kryptonite gun he had hidden, and he's ready to kill Superman, but he doesn't get the chance as Creeper bonks him on the head, taking him down without Superman ever seeing him. Creeper talks to himself about how he just saved the Man of Steel, but didn't really, since the kryptonite would have just bounced off of him, but he also doesn't think it would have since the gold aura around him is gone, meaning anything could actually hurt him now. Creeper tries to prove this to himself by firing a spitball at Superman, hitting the hero in the neck and eliciting a ouch response from him, something which seldom happens. The Creeper getting to be weird and wacky, but also having this kind of investigative reporter side here, thanks to the Jack Ryder side of him coming through, is really cool because he obviously deduces Superman is without his powers now after this big power up. And I like how Slott is using that not just to give Creeper a part in the story, but also now he knows Superman is without his powers, and after that he inadvertently reveals to the world Superman is weakened after using this power, because as he does this, there is a Newsboy Legion reporter filming the area, and she films Superman getting hit by the spitball and reacting to it, and she too deduces the fact that Superman might be weakened or without his powers after using the gold aura power. It's an interesting predicament, and I'm excited to see what Slott has to offer in the way of how he tells this story, because obviously now people are just going to like come for Superman since they have that way of being able to, you know, trigger the power, and then they can just wait it out, and then they can hurt Superman. So how is he going to get around that? Later on, Clark goes to the Bronze Swan bar, meeting with Jack Ryder, who puts Clark's gin and tonic, minus the gin, on his tab. Clark is confused since he gave Jack a brutal fact check earlier, but Jack figures he owes him one. Jack is upset that he reminded everyone that the kryptonite is dangerous to humans as well, but Clark thinks the people need to know the truth and they deserve it. I'm a little confused by this since I don't know whether it's how I read it, but it's implied, not outrightly said though, that Jack might know that Superman and Clark are the same person. That's at least how I read it, with him owing Clark a drink for what he did earlier, since he feels bad for outing Superman's secret there with the powers. That's why he's at this bar kind of drinking alone. But if he knows he's Superman, he should be kind of dying, because there's that whole Lex psychic barrier thing he did where when someone learns Clark is, or someone new learns that Clark is Superman, they have a stroke, they have a seizure. I guess maybe Creeper could have learned that Superman was Clark beforehand, and that's why he's not affected. Maybe because Creeper is crazy, it doesn't work or outrightly work or something. I'm hoping that gets rounded out within the next couple of issues, whether he does know or doesn't know, since it would be very frustrating that if he doesn't know and then he suddenly knows, and it's kind of squashing all of that continuity that Williamson and all these writers have set up and have used very well. Like, they've been pretty good at like laying down that line of like, no one can know because of the psychic barrier Lex erected. So they've been pretty good in that, and hopefully Slott isn't going against that here. I don't think he is, but it just needs to be sort of flattened out a little bit more and kind of explained a little bit more. Elsewhere, at a secret location, President Castillo contacts someone, telling them that there are people spreading dangerous lies about the kryptonite hurting people, so they need this person to stop these people any way possible, offering them payment in kryptonite bars. The person is revealed to be Toyman, who agrees to help as long as he can make a game out of it. So this is a little bit disappointing, probably the most disappointing thing in the book, since I was sure the president would be revealed to be an actual innocent party in all of this, and like the kryptonite maybe would slowly poison him and like turn him into a villain eventually. But nope, he's just like an evil dictator man right from the get-go, and yeah, that's kind of a little disappointing. I kind of expected a little bit more from Dan Slott. Superman Unlimited issue 2 revealed a hell of a lot of info on where Dan Slott is taking his Superman story. I love diving into the world now filled with kryptonite and how people are using it in interesting ways outside of just weapons, and how it's kind of fueling this entire economy, and how villains are treating it as a commodity rather than an item, a precious item they can use to defeat Superman with. I just wish the big reveal with the villain at the end with the president was a little bit better handled, since it felt like it was the safest, very cliche reveal the book could have done. The inclusion of Creeper into Superman's supporting cast though is a neat idea, and I'm looking forward to him becoming a mainstay within the book, since he's a fun addition to the supporting cast of characters. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5 out of 10.